The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
Busy, my dude. We will get into this as we get into all things, but I was starting to format the show doc. We're recording at a weird time because I have some family stuff I gotta do, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll just write down all the games I've been playing. Oh crap, I've been so busy, I've barely done anything fun with my life. And that's just it's like if you keep a journal or if you see a therapist, right, or a friend you haven't seen in a long time, and they're like, oh, fill me in, and you actually have to introspect for a minute, and you're like, crap.
I haven't done anything. This week has been lost to time. I mean, the nice thing is that if I remember correctly, we have an infinite number of weeks, so it's getting waste a few.
I'm just like, whatever, time goes on forever in all directions.
Yeah, actually, I speaking of that, I had an interesting conversation with somebody one time about how our brains are so not designed to handle the concept of infinity, because what I said is I was like, well, there's an infinite number of universes. I just happen to live in the universe where everything works out for me. And she said, well, that sounds kind of selfish. And I said, why is that? And she was like, well, because it works out for you. I'm like, we could live in the universe where everything works out for both of us. There's an infinite number of universes. And she said, well, isn't the chance of that universe existing incredibly small? And I'm like, if it's greater than zero, then there's an infinite number of them,
we only need any.
Yeah. If greater than zero, then infinite. And it's just and she's like, wait, what? I'm like, you see, our brains were meant to go find sweet treats, put them in our bodies so that way we could make more animals to go find sweet treats. That's what our brain was made to do. And now we're trying to do this stuff with it, and that's not what it was made for.
Yeah. I actually had a similar conversation with someone about just the nature of time and how we keep track of it. And I will summarize for brevity's sake, but they were trying to describe a way you might notate things that are happening over time. And I was like, you mean like a calendar? That's a calendar. And they were like, no, but and there was a good reason that they were trying to not agree with me that I won't bore you with, but they were like, no, what I'm thinking is we could say this is the information, and then there's the time that information spans over. And I was like, a calendar. That's a calendar. You're describing a calendar. A calendar is a representation of time, and then you can put things on it that happen at or over a certain time. That's a calendar. We call that a calendar. And they were just like, no, but what I mean we could do is, and after the third or fourth round of it, I was just like, it's a fucking calendar. Why do you not know what a calendar is?
It's I swear to God, this is a solved problem.
And again, they had a legitimate reason for arguing with me, and I am massively compressing that story, but I'm not changing the critical details of me eventually losing my mind that they did not understand what a calendar was.
Dude, I was talking to my kids recently. Speaking of this kind of general overarching philosophy, which is what this is. This is philosophy goggles, right?
Yeah, philosophy hour. Yep.
Yep. I was talking to my kids at one point, and they were asking me about nutrition, which is a blast to try to describe because there's so much information there, and it's and a lot of it's just I don't know, people are just human body crazy. So I was saying, well, this is kind of good for you, this is bad for you because it has a lot of fat, and this is bad for you because it has a lot of sugar. And they were like, how come everything that's bad for you tastes really good? And I said, well,
what
because...
an excellent question.
Right? And I said, well, because all of the things that taste good are very calorie dense, right? So before, when we were all, foraging for food and you found something that was sweet, that means it had a lot of energy, and your brain was wired to say, good monkey, go get more of that, right? And so you would then go do that, right? And now my children regularly will say, good monkey, go get more of that, whenever they get a delicious treat. Yes. And I'm like, Good.
Excellent.
I'm okay with this.
Good parenting.
Good monkey. Go get more of that.
The first time you bring them something and you're like, oh, look, I brought you a cookie or a treat or something. And they're like, good monkey, go get more of that. You're going to have to remember, like, wait, no, they're just repeating the thing. They're not giving me an order.
Yes, but we played video games at some point.
We did. If you want to hear us talk about video games, you can subscribe to the show, and we occasionally talk about video games. Sometimes even in the episode where we talk about video games, we eventually get to the video games. You can rank and review and like and subscribe and all the internet social words that make me exhausted to say them, but they are helpful, so we appreciate when people do them. Links for all the places you can do those things in the show notes. If you want to send us a question like the one we're about to answer in a minute, if you want to recommend a game or some other thing, there's a feedback form in there. Go do that because feedback's amazing. And I've actually found some interesting things that we never would have known about if not for the cool people in our community. If you want to go crazy and give us money, we will take your money. And in exchange for money, you get after show and other things sometimes. But most importantly, for this moment, we will shout you out if you support us at a high enough level. So first, I need to thank our 4-bit portables, Brad, David, Joshua, Keith, and Martin. I need to thank our 8-bit classics, Yarno, Jay Brent, John, and Kevin, and our 16-bit hero, Michael.
And for $1,000, we will create a podcast episode strictly about Hazbin Hotel and just talking about that because the show's awesome. And if you all haven't seen it yet, you need to.
I'm super excited to watch it. Like I feel like I've gotten to a point in my life where I consume so much less like pop culture media and stuff than I did when I was younger because I massively overindulged and now I have swung so far in the other direction. But I have people like you in my life who know my tastes, and you don't just tell me everything, every passing thing you had on in the background while you were washing the dishes. Like, you only bring the things that you're like, I'm pretty sure you're going to care about this one. And when you put this on my radar, and because it's a musical, and I went and I went and listened to like the opening song, I was like, yes, George, good monkey, get more of this.
Go get more of this. Excellent. Excellent. Good book ending. So mailbag.
We do have a mailbag question. I think this is an interesting one because I immediately did the cheating thing where I like broke it out into the question that the question made me think of. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what is your favorite controller? So like it could be a specific controller, but I was thinking more like style of controller. And then what do you think is the best controller? So for me, I would say the best controller is the PS5 controller because I'm a tiny bit biased because I think I like the thumbs side by side, even though I think ergonomically the offset thumbs is probably better because you have thumbs on buttons and then thumb on a stick. And that I get that, but that's just not how that was not my life experience. So sorry, Xbox people, but I think the PS5 controller, the sticks are great. The buttons feel good. The stupid capacitive trigger things on the back or resistive triggers are like do kind of interesting little things with like it feels good in the hands. The grip has like tiny, did you ever notice the texture on the back of the grip is actually tiny PlayStation symbols? So it's like,
oh no,
yeah
cool.
Look at it real close and you can see it's like a little X and a little square and a little circle, a little triangle. It's
the
like
designer got his wings that day.
Yeah, right. It's just a really fun, well-made, great to use controller. But what is my favorite controller? Super Nintendo. I hate that my hands are now way too big for it, but like when someone says video game controller, even though I pick up what looks like some version of a PlayStation controller every single day, right? A modern 2-stick, 4 shoulder buttons, like I have one of those in my hand every single day, but when someone says video game controller, I still think Super Nintendo controller. I love that goddamn controller. It is, to me, the definition of a video game controller. And I still don't understand people who play classic games with a thumbstick. You're all nuts. I think you're dangerous individuals and you probably should not be allowed to drive. Like, how do you play Super Mario World on the Nintendo Switch using the thumbstick instead of the D-pad? Get out of here right now.
Yeah, no, just truly, truly awful people. But please like and subscribe and
yeah, your money is still good here.
Yeah. We like the money. We just don't like you. Oh God, capitalism. Anyways, that's not the point. The point is that what do I think is the best controller? Co-sign that. And again, like I've been a PlayStation nerd since many moons, since PS2, right? You know, so like I never really got into Xbox, so like perhaps there is something to be said about the Xbox controller, but I think that they're similar enough that, you know, whatever. So I think that again, best controller. Yes, the haptics are amazing on it. There's a lot of things that it can do that just make it feel really good. And it's interesting because there are some games that I've played for the PS4 that are also playable on the PS5 where they did update it so that way the controller can do stuff, and it does make a difference, right? I was playing No Man's Sky. And when you hold down the R2 to like lift off, originally you just held down R2 and you lift it off. This time it has a bit of like a resistance and then kind of like a jostle of like the ship lifting off, and it feels awesome, you know, I'm like, yeah. So definitely the best controller. Favorite controller, I'm going to mod that a little bit to most nostalgic controller, right? Which I think there's two for me. One is absolutely the SNES controller, and the reason in particular that I have such a nostalgia for that is, I mean, again, you know, played tons of games with it, loved it, but playing Mega Man X, I just always remember doing the index
claw?
finger wrap.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you're a super elite gamer.
Yeah, man, I always did like the AB, and I had the claw around, and yeah, and just like that felt awful, right? That's not the way your hand's supposed to be, But yeah, man, I remember always playing that. And then I also have a particular, and again, like all of these are in my heart for weird reasons, but the N64 controller, not because it's made particularly well or that anybody has the three hands that they clearly suspected people would have, but because, and this is the weird part, is that the analog stick wasn't made out of soft rubber. It was made out of hard plastic, right? So after playing Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for like 3 hours, my thumb would hurt,
Yeah.
you know, and it would hurt in the afternoon and it hurt the whole next day a little bit. But that pain reminded me of all of the fun I had playing Ocarina of Time, right? So like now whenever I have that pain, you know, for whatever reason, I'm like, yeah, I got to play a lot of video games, you know? And it's so weird to associate pain, ostensibly an unpleasant thing, with a particularly nostalgic, like innocent childhood thing. But yeah, it's absolutely linked together in my mind, and I love it.
I think that's also uniquely difficult to explain to another person because the word pain means something negative, but the memory in your brain and in their brain is a positive one. So if you say like, you know, yeah, my thumb really hurts because I was playing a lot of video games yesterday, and they're like, but your thumb hurts, and it's like, no. See, you're rifling back through times in your life where something bad happened. Think back through good things, and then imagine like I play piano a little bit, and you like work your fingers in weird ways, and I have the same kind of thing, right? It's like there will be days where I'm like, my pinkies hurt. I'm like, oh, because I had a really good practice and I played for a long time, right? And so it's the same kind of thing. Like there have been action games we've played where the next day, like my index fingers from like squeezing the crap out of the top of the controller, I'm like, yeah, I beat the crap out of that boss, right? But it's hard to communicate to someone, I'm happy that my fingers hurt.
You know, I think that the easiest one, or probably potentially the most generic one, is sore from working out, right? You know, where it's just like, my body hurts, and it's just like, why did you do that? It's like, no, wait, I mean, like, it's a good thing though. My body hurts, you know. So, but yes, so I do have that particular place in my heart. But outside of my body hurting, that doesn't matter, because what does matter is, what are you playing, and why should I care?
Remember that thing I said way back again in the opening? Yeah, so not a lot. I've hit a confluence of like, my kids are now old enough that they're doing activities and crap all the time, which means they have to be like shuttled around and all that has to be dealt with. And like work is busy enough. And then just like living on this planet, like, and having other responsibilities and stuff. The last couple weeks, I've just been completely like disconnected from everything except like the one long game that I'm playing, which right now is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Which is great, and I'm actually having a blast with it, but this is that introspective moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to write down all the games I've been playing. Oh, no, it's just this one. And I did actually have some, like, weird game time, I guess. Like I'm not really like I was game adjacent. So Princess Peach Showtime is coming out in like a few days as of us recording. I think it comes out like this weekend. But they released a playable demo, and my kids don't play a ton of video games, but they have a little bit of video game time, and they have a piggy bank. And that piggy bank is full of coins that are never, ever going to get spent because they are barely legal tender in this like day and age. And so I had an epiphany. There is not enough money in there for them to buy this game, but I kind of want this game, and I think they would enjoy this game. And I was like, I can use this as a way to teach them a lesson about sharing the money in the piggy bank. So I installed the demo on the Switch, and I didn't play it, but I sat there and watched them play it, right? And then when they were done, I was like, did you enjoy that? They're like, yeah, we enjoyed that. Would you like to play the rest of the game? Yeah, we'd like to play the rest of the game. Would you like to play it enough that you would spend your money in the piggy bank to buy this game? If you have enough, I will buy it and let you play it on the Switch. They're like, yeah, okay. And I was like, I want you to think on it. Like, you just played the game. You're coming off the, like, we got video game time high. Like, I want you to think on it. And then the next day, my 10-year-old just very solemnly went, I want to buy the game. And then my 8-year-old like came into the room and was like, yeah, I think I want to buy the game too. And I didn't say anything, but I was just like, Jesus, you took this way more seriously than I expected. But so we like cracked open the piggy bank, so to speak. It's actually an old peanut butter jar. And we counted the money, and they did not have enough of the money. And so I said, hey, how about this? I will give you the remainder of the money on one condition. They're like, oh, what's the condition? Like, then I also get to play it, because it won't just be your game. It'll be our game that I also helped you buy. And they were like, yeah, that seems fair. I was like, great. And then they like went off to play with their friends or something. And I just turned to my partner and I was like, I already pre-ordered the game 2 days ago. I just wanted to see if I could get this experiment all the way to its conclusion. But like, I was buying that game.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, like that, look, that money's already spent.
Yeah. Long gone. But I was like, I don't know what I would have done if this didn't turn out the way I wanted. Like I would have had to, like, kind of duck and weave and bob and move a little bit. But I was like, this went exactly the way I was hoping. Like, they understand that this is like a pooled resource and that they can't just play games whenever, because like video game time is still restricted and stuff. But I was like, I need to not let this go to my head, because every stupid kid experiment is not going to go this well.
Nope. But and also too, if they're like, no, we don't really want to buy the game, then like 2 weeks later they're like, hey, the game's available. It's like, yeah, but you ain't playing it because you ain't bought in.
You had a chance to invest in this hot new game idea, and you didn't want to do it.
Could have gotten in on the ground floor, man, but no, you passed. And now you can, you know what? You lose your video game time. You get to sit here during your video game time and watch me play the video game you want to play.
Yeah, this is what fun looks like. You don't get to have any fun, though. Stop being happy for me.
You're smiling. Stop smiling. It's like you had a video game, and I had a video game, and I had this straw. See, here's the straw.
Dude, I kid you not. 4 times in the last week, I had legitimate reason to reference that. And I just don't know what is going on in my life that keeps coming up. Like, it's a little concerning. It's not a happy scene.
Well, no, it's not. And especially when somebody's like, oh, what's that from? There Will Be Blood. And
right.
Like,
yeah.
What? Yeah.
Said by Daniel Day-Lewis while he's threatening a teenager.
Yeah, who's like crying right before he beats him to death
with a bowling
pin. Yeah. No, those are the types of jokes that are so funny that HR likes to hear them.
Yeah, over and over. They want to write it down word for word.
But and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth going good?
Oh, it's going great, and depending on how schedules sync up, I was talking to Mike. Nope, Mike, just wait your turn. But we were talking, and he might actually want to like jump in and do one about that, because JRPGs are apparently all he does with his life now. So he may break his cone of silence over that at some point. if I ever finish it, because it is crazy longer than I expected. I am 30 hours in, and I think I am less than halfway.
Ooh, that sounds like a JRPG to me.
I know. Remake was like 40 to 50 total, like near 100%ing it. I think 100%ing this is like 100 plus.
Woof.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying it, so it's okay.
And it's weird because I'd say like I don't have that type of game playing in me, but one, I've spent 200 plus hours on Baldur's Gate, and two, one of the games I've been playing recently, just again because like I was like, oh, I've got a little bit of time. I dipped back into Civilization 6, man. I've got a problem. That game, I mean, I have gotten so much of my money's worth out of that game. It has brought me so much joy. It is my security blanket game, where I'm like, I don't know, what do I want to play for the next 2 days? Like, what video game do I want to play for the next 2 days? Could play Civilization 6.
And I wish I could find that in myself. Like, I just, because I don't care that there is a particular game. It's that there's just anything, right? Whenever someone's like, oh yeah, well, I'm doing dishes, like I just always have like The Office on in the background because that's just like my comfort show, or like, oh, this is the music that I listen to every time I go on a road trip, so it just always puts me in a good mood. I'm like, why don't I have that? Like, why don't, like, I want a safety, reliable thing, damn it.
Well, I think that the interesting thing is with the way that we approach video games, I feel like that you're more like in the middle where like you'll generally put 20 to 40 hours or something like that in a game, right? I will either put like 10 hours or 100, but
Yes.
Nowhere in between,
Yeah, the 40 hours to roll credits experience is not into you. You want 4 hours or 400.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like I either play it for 4 hours and I'm like, I got the gist. That was fun. That was tasty. Or it's like one of the 4 games that I will go back and play, like, The Last of Us or Civilization 6 or, the half a dozen other ones where it's just kind of like, I just go back and replay that once a year because I want to, Dead Cells. Like, I've put so many hours into Dead Cells. So, but all that being said, anything else you want to say about Final Fantasy Rebirth? Because I'm going to talk about my stuff.
There isn't, but I have an interesting transition point for you because Final Fantasy VII originally came out on the PS1, and then the remake and now Rebirth are also PlayStation exclusives at first, right? Remake eventually went to PC, and Rebirth is in its PlayStation exclusive window right now, but eventually it will go to PC. And the reason I say this is a nice little transition for you is because I know these 2 games that you have on the list you were playing because I had to open the PlayStation app on my phone, which I virtually never use, and you happen to be playing one of these. And then the next day, I had some weird reason that I was like, oh, I need to open the... Oh, you know what it is? I was setting up the PlayStation Remote Play. And so I launched the app because you can log in like with a QR code. And so I launched the app so I could log in with the QR code reader. And it was like, oh, George is playing like... And I was like, oh, wait, do both of these games have Rogue in the title? Does he only play games that are roguelikes now?
Apparently.
Yeah. And so I was just like, oh, if I never, ever would have seen this if I hadn't been doing like this Final Fantasy VII thing. So I kind of know what you're playing, but I don't yet know why I should care.
Exactly. So what I occasionally do is when like the kids are out, because when the kids are playing with me, I try to engage with them, right? Like I'm sitting there and playing, but there's times when like they are off playing nicely and kindly by themselves or with each other, and I'm like, okay, I'm good with that, but I kind of need to be like on alert, So sometimes what I will do with that time, not listen to The Office or whatever other comfort thing I might do, but I will scroll through and through the PlayStation like free stuff from subscription, right?
Yeah, because you have the Pro Plus Windows XP 2000 edition. Because I think the bottom tier you don't get free games anymore.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, you do. You still get the monthly. But I mean, to be fair, I don't know because I'm the mid tier.
Okay. Yeah.
But my understanding is that for the lowest tier, you still get the once a month free games or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. But then for the middle tier, you get access to the entire like library of like 300 games.
Yeah. So like you don't have to worry about like missing a month because that library is just always there.
Right. And then the master level, the highest level, is that plus you get all the nostalgia games. And I'm like, I did that. We've done that. Like, I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm not gonna pay an extra $30 a year for all of the, like, oh, you could play Tekken 1. I'm like, I'm good. So I say all of that to say that, yeah, so I'll scroll through that and say, like, well, what looks cool, and I'll actually, like, say, like, oh, this game looks interesting, and, like, read it up and be like, okay. And the cool thing is I can then just say download the PlayStation, and then, you know, I've got like a 2 to 5 games that I'm like, let me try these out. And so I was scrolling through, and yeah, I do tend to like roguelites, and both of these were, I was like, and the nice thing is that the cost of failure is like near zero, right? Because I was like, yeah, Rogue Lords, I don't know, seems cool, whatever, seems like it might be fun mechanically, sure. And then the same thing with Rogue Book. So for Rogue Lords, it's a really interesting game. You play as, you, the player, are the devil.
Go on.
And so you have your minions who consist. I didn't get very far in the game, but like, it's like Dracula, the Headless Horseman, Bloody Mary, you know, like people like that, right? So you have like all these like famous villains, you know, and their job is to go spread. Like you were defeated many moons ago, and now you're like resurgent, and they are there to like remind people that the devil exists and like cause havoc on your behalf, right? So it's turn-based, and it does some really interesting things. One of them, but the most interesting, I would say, so it kind of works like a branching roguelite, where like, you know, you pick which path you want to do, and then that leads to other paths, and it gives you the maps. You can say like, oh, this area I'm going to will help me regenerate health, or this is a combat or an elite combat or whatever, right? I say all of that to say that one of the things, the mechanic that it does, I think is really interesting, is that after every combat, your health and spell points, like your health and mana, completely recharge, you know? So that's pretty neat. So then the question is, how do you lose, right? Well, you have Diabolic Essence, and if your characters take damage beyond their hit points, right, you lose Diabolic Essence, right? So like that's like kind of like you as the devil's health, and when that goes to 0, your run is done, right? But the cool thing is that you can use your Diabolic Essence to cheat. The game calls it cheating, right? Because you're the devil and the rules don't apply to you. And it's really interesting. So like you press the button and it opens up like like everything kind of like turns into this like red tent. And then you can adjust the enemy's health or mana.
Hey.
You can like straight up take abilities like away from them, like take status effects. You can increase your health, you know, like, and so it's great because like literally you can just go into a combat and somebody's like got 50 hit points. You could be like, no, you have 0 hit points. And then they have 0 hit points. And you hit them once and they die. And that just is joyful. I don't know. Like there's something about that, you know?
It's definitely a very smart theming, right? Because saying I go into battle, I select my sword, and I do 50 damage and they die is just like familiar and not particularly novel. But saying I hack into the game and set their health to 0 and then they just die is like, yeah, the outcome's the same, but isn't it really about the journey?
Yep, absolutely, right. And especially because some of the sound bites that the devil will say when you press the button is he goes like, you know, this reality displeases me. It's time that I changed it, you know? And
that's just awesome.
Right.
There's just,
yeah, it's just like a nice
no way
little
around
thing.
it. It's awesome.
Yep, and then when you like adjust their health or whatever, he goes like, the dice were loaded from the start, you know? It's just like, yeah, man, you never had a chance to win because I got the devil on my side, you know? Like, you're just a guy. What do you think's going to happen, you know? And like there's one of the resources that you have to manage is like terror. Like, so, you know, generally when you go to like into combat, you can either choose to attack stealthily, which will give you like a skill, or attack some other way and that'll give you souls, or a direct attack, which increases the terror, you know? And so like increased terror gives you different benefits and all sorts of stuff, but it's just kind of, it's all, to your point, themed very well, right? You know? And I really enjoyed playing it for about 3 playthroughs, and then I quit that game hard. Despite all, I would say play it for as long as you find joy. Every time I lost the game, I was so frustrated.
Aww.
And the reason why is because the difficulty curve is straight up trash in this game. Because what'll happen is you'll be playing and like you'll have 100% of your diabolic essence. You're going through one-shotting people and all, you know, like just kicking butt and taking names. And then you'll fight a bad guy that will just straight up kill you, you know? And I'm like, and it won't always be like an elite combat. It will be a normal combat. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? You know, I was doing fine. Clearly there's something that I'm missing, but and two of the times I lost, it was the same bad guy type that beat me. I'm like, I am clearly missing something on how to beat this bad guy. What I think that it is that like there's two, you can deal hit point damage or spell point damage. And I always went hit point damage, you know, because I understand that really well. And I think with this one, you have to be able to do both. And I never built that in any of my characters. But like, if you can't do both, then it just kills you. And I'm like, that's stupid, you know, because you shouldn't give me the option to build all the way into this one tree if an hour and a half into the game, you're just going to be like, oh, well, you didn't invest in this other thing, so now you die. That's just a mess, you know? So yeah, the difficulty curve is complete trash on that game, which is disappointing because everything else was really enjoyable. The one other thing, negative note that I will give to it is, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, I believe that there is a threshold of how much time, if you were going to hear a sound bite or sound clip, how much time can pass regularly before you hear the same sound clip twice. Because if you've got, for example, if every time as Jumpman you take a step, you hear, you know, that is too many times, right? The reason why I say that is because every time, like one of your people would attack, right? They would make one of the same three sounds, you know, like Bloody Mary would say like, mirror, mirror, who shall die tonight? And that was cool the first time. But like the 17,000th time I heard it, I'm like, shut up. Just shut up.
So I think I have actually thought about this a lot over the years because that sound just still continues to haunt me. But more importantly, the concept that it forced me to reckon with is like, what makes a good sound? And it's really complicated, right? Like how is this sound literally crafted, right? And if it's on like an old arcade cabinet, it's synthetic and it can be like screechy and grating. If it's anything modern, then they have the entire universe of sound available to them, right? Including sounds that don't really exist that they fabricate. So, you know, more tools, but it's how that sound is crafted in isolation, how it is mixed in with other sounds that are happening, and how often it happens are all like ingredients in the is this annoying or not formula. And I believe that dialogue is like uniquely susceptible to becoming annoying because I literally think about like walking sounds in games I play all the time. And I'm like, why isn't this bothering me? Why isn't that bothering me? Right. And that helped me kind of build my understanding over time. It's like, oh, because in this game, there's first off, the walking sound is not the loudest sound that is coming out of the speakers, right? And it's like, it's a more natural sound and it varies from surface to surface and it varies with the pace that I'm moving and it blends in with the music, right? Like Mario games and the Yoshi like sub brand, the Zelda franchise, those games are like famous for having in-universe sound effects that literally work with the music. I watched an entire amazing YouTube video about how all of the sound effects in the original Sonic the Hedgehog are written in C major, which is what the opening level music is. So anytime you pick up a ring, it always sounds like it could have been picked up at that time because it fits with the music that's playing. Like, you can make things feel like super cohesive. I don't actually know if you can do that with dialogue because our brains do not treat a person speaking like any other noise, right? Any instrument, any natural sound, anything that isn't human speech, we do not treat the same as human speech in a language we speak, right? Like, that's why I can put K-pop or J-pop on in the background while I'm working and not get distracted by the lyrics because I do not speak those languages. So I recognize it as human speech, but my brain isn't processing it as human speech because I don't speak either of those languages. But if someone just goes like, like I'll get you every single time like their turn comes up in the turn order, and then you use the ability that makes them get 4 turns in a row, and so it's like I'll get you, and then you press X, and then they take a swing, then I'll get, it's like right, like
It's like stop.
yeah, because you just if I think it would honestly be better if they just like grunted, right?
Mhm.
Link
Yes.
goes like ha, 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 and there's only like 3 or 4 of them, and they repeat a million billion times, but you don't really feel the same visceral way about it as if he went like swing, swing, stab, right? Like that would feel super grating.
Yes, it would. But I think that even with Link is that there are bursts of that, but then you'll go 10, 15 minutes without hearing it.
Yeah,
you
because
know?
it's not super combat heavy.
Right. So I think that one, I think you're right. I think that there's a difference between sound effects versus verbiage, right? So like sound effects, you can get away with a greater frequency of the sound than verbiage, right? So verbiage pushes it towards less frequent, right? I think that two, something that will push it to like being able to higher frequency before it gets annoying is it relaying information, you know, or is it just for nothing, right? You know, so like for example, you know, when you get hit in Star Fox and it goes like, right, you know, where it's like helping you to be like, hey, you got hit hard, so you know, like that, or you know, like if like for example, if you hear like a bing bing or something like that, which means like somebody's coming up behind you, that would get annoying less fast than something that's just a noise for the sake of noise, and also would get annoying less fast than somebody being like Fox behind you, and you'd be like, shut up, I get it, you know. But so I think that you're right. So I think that there's sound effects versus verbiage, informational versus non-informational, and then also directive versus like informational or non-directive, right? So for example, if you know Peppy said, you know, Fox, there's an enemy behind you, right? That would be less annoying than Fox, shoot the enemy behind you. You know, like even that little bit of a twist would make that so much more annoying because you're like, stop telling me what to do. I got it, right? You know, I heard the noise, I got it under control. Or another one of, hey, listen, that's really annoying. And think about that frequency was not that high. You know, like she would say that maybe once an hour, you know, but it was super annoying because it was verbiage, not sound effects. It did not have direct information that you needed in that point in time. And it was a directive, not just simply informational, you know, so because it hit all 3, even though you only heard it once an hour, that was too often, you know.
Once was too much.
Yeah. So I think that in this case, the fact that it's verbiage, not sound effect, and it's not directive, but it is also not informational because it's just like, you know, basically the information that they're relaying is that you attacked and you're like, yeah, I know I did that. I just told them to go do that. It's like, okay, I got it. You know, so I think that there's probably more factors, but I think that those 3, depending on how they're mixed together, determines like where on the frequency bar of how often you can hear it before you're like, you know, I get it.
Yeah. I think the one additional thing that verbiage has working against it is the less natural the thing someone's saying is, then your brain has to do like extra processing, which is super annoying because now it's like this thing got my attention in a way I couldn't ignore. It didn't help me do anything. It was telling me something that was obnoxious, and it was like delivered in a way that made no goddamn sense. So here is my anecdotal piece of evidence to support that. So in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there's like a million billion minigames, so many goddamn minigames, and I love them. But they have a lot of really tragically terrible, like the people involved speaking over it, right? So like, just think of like any sports video game you've ever played, right? I know we talked about this when we played NBA Jam, like he's on fire, right? Like, but you're not on fire like 150 times in 5 seconds, right? Like you may hear that 0 times in a whole game. You may hear it a couple times in a game, right? And it's like, that is sort of the way like a commentator for a basketball game might talk. Like it's just effusive praise of the player's performance, right? So
boom shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka. Yeah. So was that a dunk? Was that a big dunk? I think got you that.
Yeah, I think so.
But in Rebirth, so there's like a card game called Queen's Blood, and it's actually very fun. It would be very frustrating to play in real life, but in a video game where the cards are like magic and you don't have to keep track of certain things on the board. It's actually super fun. And some of the times that the game makes you play Queen's Blood is like, oh, this character that I care about and another character that I care about, like they are playing and the stakes are high for some ridiculous reason. And so people are talking while the game is going on. So like you will play a card and you will say something, right? And then they will play a card and they will say something, and you can tell they're trying to key off of factors like, oh, if you do this thing and it like raises your score, then like you get a positive statement. Or if your opponent does something and it raises their score, then like they would get a positive statement. And then you're like, oh man, I gotta turn this one around. But it like the algorithm they use to decide what to say, first off, it is way too frequent. And second, it's not like very good. So like basically, think of Queen's Blood as is it what was the game where you like reversey, where you have like the black and white tiles, they look kind of like ghost stones, and you're like,
sure,
yeah. So it's like, oh, I surround all of your white tiles with my black tiles, and so then they all flip over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to like have the most in your color. So you can set up the board in Queen's Blood such that it's like, oh, right now they have more points than me, but all of these spaces over here, they cannot, there's nothing that allows them to get those spaces. So I am definitely going to win, and by a huge, ridiculous margin. And so while you're like setting up this clever strategy to like dominate the board, it's like, oh, I've got you now. And the commentator's like, he's on the ropes. And then like your character, you know, Cloud is just like, I got to turn this one around. I'm like, what game are you guys watching? Right. So it's like, not only is it not helpful, it's actively distracting, because it's like if Flippy was telling you to shoot in front of you, like when the enemy was obviously like right on your tail. Like, it's like, Flippy, you're lying to me. Like, just shut up. Like, you're not helping. You're actively hurting the situation. Right.
Quick,
so like,
Fox, you got to eject. It's like, I'm at full health. No, you got to leave. And it's just like, I just got to power up. Get out of there, Fox.
Yeah. Right. Like, I think misleading sound effects would be harsh, but I think misleading dialogue gets like an order of magnitude force multiplier, right? If every time you got hit, it made the health noise, and every time you hit the enemy, it made the health noise, and then when you picked up a power up, it made the damage noise, like your brain would rewire on that super fast, right? You'd just be like, oh, those are just the noises that they make. But if humans are speaking a language at you that you understand and they are essentially gaslighting you, like that is really hard to ignore, because our brains are designed to not ignore that.
Well, and also too, I'm just picturing if you really wanted to mess with somebody, what you could do is just create like a normal video game like Baba Is You or something like that. But literally, so like, let's say there's 50 different places where like sound effects can happen, and just randomize all of them, you know? Just like, so anything can make any sound effect, you know? And then just watch people lose their minds about like, all right, so the thud means this. Wait, but now this, it's set thud for this too. Are those two the thing? No, that's not the same thing. But is it the, you know, like, and just watch people like slowly get driven insane. I think that would be...
I'd love to do that with like a classic game too, right? Like do a ROM hack of Super Mario World, but just randomize the sound effects. So like every time you do anything, it makes a random sound. It'd be great.
Because because like it'd be amazing the first time you got a mushroom, grew, and it went glue, 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 and you'd be like, what? Like your brain would just be like, wait, what? And then you pick it up again, and it goes do 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 do, and you're like, no, but good things are happening. The other game I've been playing is Rogue Book. This game I would recommend. And honestly, if you get a chance to play it, I recommend it because I probably spent a total of 10 hours playing it and was able to beat it. It is a roguelike, so, you know, like, it's a roguelite. So, you know, I mean, I happened to get lucky in the run that I did because, you know, I just kind of got a whole bunch of... Oh, wait, you don't like deck builders, though, right?
I don't tend to seek them out, but I do generally enjoy them if I get into one. Queen's Blood is a deck builder.
Yeah, there you go. So it's a deck builder, and so, but the conceit is that you're trying to, like, you've been pulled into a book and you're trying to like conquer the book and get out. So it's a it's a hex map, right? and only some of the hexes are colored in, and you have a brush, and you can use the brush to like color in tiles, and how much ink you have, changes based off of like, the types of ink and all this sort of stuff. But as you reveal the map, that reveals like, challenges or what have you, like all this kind of stuff as you can explore the map, and you can, build your deck as you go. And I think there's 4 possible heroes. I beat it once I only had access to 3. But the different heroes have like different types of cards that go into their decks. And so as you build, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm, out of these 3 cards, I have 2 cards for this person to pick from and 1 card from this person. Like, which of the 2 decks am I trying to build out? Because they're all shuffled together when you're playing. So the game is, it was just really enjoyable. Like and most importantly is every time I died, the difficulty curve was correct, right? Because like every time I died, I went into it being like, this is probably it, you fight the first battle and you lose like 2 hit points. You're like, yeah, I got it. And by like the 5th battle, you're like, okay, I've got like 3/4 of my health. I'm probably still pretty good. And then by like the 7th or 10th battle, you're like, I've got 25% of my health. These monsters are getting pretty tough. This is probably the end. And to be fair, at least half a dozen times when I'd say this one's probably it, it wasn't it. I was able to eke out like 1 more victory, but I was like, but now this is it, so all of that was really enjoyable. The one funny story I have for this one is that when you're first starting, there's this little kind of raccoon character that gives you the tutorial, right? And eventually, like, you finish the tutorial, he's like, okay, I'll just be over here. It's like, okay, fine. And the one thing that I found frustrating was that there were a handful of cards and abilities that were like, you can get more gold from encounters. And I'm like, gold is pointless, because every time I open a treasure chest, it cost me 25 gold to add a card to my inventory. And I was ending the game with like 500, 600 gold each time. Like, they were just not pulling the gold as fast as I was making it. And I'm like, why would I ever equip this thing that makes me get more gold or whatever? And then I was playing, and there's only 3 chapters to it, so I was at chapter 3, and for the 3rd time playing it through, and I'm doing pretty good, got a pretty good deck, feeling pretty strong, been eating my Wheaties, and the little raccoon dude was still there, and I'm like, why do they keep having this raccoon dude there? And I got near him, and it's like, hey, press X, like you would do to interact with an object.
Hey, press X on this raccoon.
Yeah, man. And so like I was like, yeah, I'll bite. It was the shop. There's a shop
where you spend the gold.
Where you spend the gold to get really good items. And I was like, oh, well, this makes a huge difference. And with the shop items in my belt, I was actually able to beat the game, Yeah,
so you were playing on ultra hard by accident.
I was. And the nice thing, though, is that last one I played on ultra easy because I had inadvertently saved all of my gold for like the last shop, which I guess probably has more rare items. But like one of the item combinations I got was a card that it would cost 2 mana, and you start each round with 3, right? So it's a heavy cost card. And it was like the next 2 hits on this bad guy are crits. And I'm like, that's a pretty powerful card. And then you can socket some of them with gems, and this one was socketable. And one of the sockets was, this card costs 0.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, those 2 things together, please and thank you. So yeah, combine those 2, and then against the big boss, I was just like, well, I mean, I was almost always critting on him because every time that card came up, I immediately applied it. So, yeah, that's what made it winnable was, I think, not only having access to the shop, but specifically not having access to the shop in the first 2 chapters.
Yeah. Well, you had become like a master of gun fu, but with an unloaded gun. And then someone introduced you to bullets, and you were like, whoa, you mean now I can fight people up close and far away? Oh, this changes everything.
Oh, my God. And the one other thing I will say that I like about it, so with Rogue Lords, the roguelite portion of it was just you unlocked other abilities you could now find, very similar to Gungeon, which, I enjoyed Gungeon. It's good. But I always prefer one where it is like you get a tangible thing, like that actually makes the game a little bit easier. Not so much easier, because I do want it to be like, hey, I'm learning about it, right? But this one, the cool thing is that you gain pieces of paper, which is like the units that you use to exchange for improving, the game, the stuff that is permanent currency, right? But what the improvements that you make to make the game a little bit easier, like the roguelite portion, what they're called? Embellishments.
Hey.
Because you're telling a story, And it's like, oh, but I'm embellishing a little bit. Like, you know what? There were 2 alchemist towers instead of 1. And, oh, there were some extra gems. And that's what I found. I'm like, I like that.
Again, theming. Like, it super matters. Like,
it
there's probably not a ton of original mechanics, maybe 0 original mechanics in either of these games. Like, I don't know. I'm not an encyclopedia of goddamn mechanics. Get off my back. But, like, the theming can be so, like, I think as critical as the mechanics.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if somebody says, hey, I've got this cool game, where I roll click'em clack'ems, and like if I roll a number that's higher than another number, then things I want happens, and it's like, oh, okay. But if it's like, no, I roll this, iron dice that like allows my dwarf to do this dwarven forge, and it's just like, ooh, I like that,
Ooh.
So yeah. The artwork is really in both games actually, but the artwork in Roguebook in particular is just really delightful. The enemies are fun and satisfying and unique. I will say, if you do play it, the enemies, when they they'll have like different like abilities and statuses in like boxes. Read that because because it's super, like they straight up tell you what the bad guy's deal is. But if you're like, I think I got the gist of it, you might not have the gist of it. And it is like hypercritical. There was one where like I was fighting a bad guy, and there were like 2, like 3 or 4 bad guys in front of him. And I typically, when there's like a big bad and a bunch of like little minions, I will attack the minions just because I'm like, this is going to get out of hand. Like the minions will nickel and dime me to death while I'm trying to beat the big bad. Right. So I beat the first minion, and the big bad just didn't do anything that turn. I was like, psh, I've got all the time in the world to beat these minions. Kill another 2 minions and, hit the big bad a little bit. And then beat the final minion. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And the big bad's like, I'm going to hit you for 50 out of 60 hit points. And I'm like, you've been asleep. Have you been charging up? What's been going on? And then I looked at it, and he had an ability called Hungry, which is every time you beat one of his minions, he eats them and gets stronger. And I'm like, ooh, that was pretty... man, that was pretty critical information that they were blasting to me the whole time. It was like, yeah, I should have read the fine print. By fine print, I mean title of the article.
Yeah. I appreciate that advice, because I have definitely caught myself at times like something pops up on the screen and I'm like, yeah, press circle, got it. And then I close the box and I'm like, what was I pressing circle to accomplish? Where am I supposed to be pressing circle? Why would anyone ever want to press circle? Like, I maybe should have read that.
You're like Tim's brother, where it's just like, yeah, no, got it. Yeah. 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 And the last thing, just to kind of mention it real fast, is I've been playing a lot of chess with Teddy. Because like he's part of like a chess club in school, so they play a lot of chess, and so he's been
really,
yeah,
that's kind of cool,
right? And so like it's just a bunch of kids playing, and so the interesting thing is that Teddy has been doing a lot of that, and he's like, hey, Dad, why don't we play chess? And I was like, yeah, sure, man, let's play. And play the first round, beat him. Play the second round, beat him. The thing is that he is now good enough that like I can't, like I have to pay attention, because we played the third time, and I very foolishly lost my queen in like the first 10 moves, and then also like lost another piece because I was just not paying close attention. And it's a mistake that I make regularly. And so we were about 3/4 of the way through the game, and I'm like, there is a non-zero chance that I'm going to lose this game, because I was just like so far behind, right? And it was more so like, this game is Teddy's to lose, because like if Teddy plays well, I may not be able to recover from this. But fortunately, he made a handful of mistakes where like, I was like, oh, I'm going to, look like I'm trying to capture your queen, but I'm really trying to capture this other piece. And I managed to pull it out barely. And so then he broke down crying, and he was like, I thought I was going to win. And I was like, buddy, you got to remember, I've been playing chess for a long time. It'll be many years before you beat me. It's like sweat's trickling down the side of my face, where I was like, buddy, it's about the journey. You don't climb Everest in a day, man. I want you to be good at being chess. I want you to continue to train. Like it's like Master Roshi and Goku at the first Budokai, right? Where it's just like I can't lose to him because then he's got nowhere to go, right? But at the same point in time, I'm like, that was closer than I would have liked to admit.
No, I don't know why, but that just reminded me when Picard is taken hostage, and then as he like they rescue him, and then as he's leaving, he does the big dramatic like there are 4 lights, and then later they're just like in private they're like Picard couldn't break you, and he's like I was seconds from folding. I would have given them anything.
Yeah. Oh no. The co-sign all of that. Yeah, because I love that because like you said in private, they're like, oh, you couldn't break you. And he's like, because he says like he offered me everything, and she's like, you didn't say yes. He goes, no, I didn't, but I was going to. I would have told him anything. But the really scary part was in the end, I really did think I saw 5 lights.
Yeah, because they did win.
Yeah, because they did break him. So it's just like that to me. Sorry, I know this has nothing to do with video games, but like. That to me is the awesome part, because it's not the story about like how Superman came in and punched the guy so hard it liquefied his internal organs, right? It wasn't about Captain Picard. It wasn't about Captain Picard being the stalwart, impenetrable Captain Picard, but it's a story about the fact that it's like, no, like he did his best, but like he absolutely was completely broken by the end of it. And the worst thing is that, and I think we might mention this on the show before. I know I've mentioned it to you, but like, God help anyone who tries to call out sick on the Enterprise, right? Because he went back to work after that, you know?
He did. He went back to work after being a Borg. Like,
yep. Went back to work after living an entire life and watching his whole known family die, and that was at over 30 minutes. He stood up and went back to work, so like, yeah, and so if Riker's like, I don't know, sorry, sir, I got a bit of a stomach bug. And he's like, I'm sorry. Did you watch your son die in front of you and then find out that he never actually existed? Get on the bridge, number one.
As soon as someone's had a harder day than me, they can go. Actually, no, you know what? That's actually the worst part is he would never do that, right? Like,
yeah, it's true.
Like someone would be like, I just have a stomach bug. And he would go like full Ted Lasso on you and just be like, oh my God, that's terrible. Like take all the time you need. Like I'm just dealing with this existential crisis about a universe that I lived through during the time we've been having this conversation. But you do what you need to do to get better.
Yeah.
And he would not be trying to like one up you or anything. He would be 100%. I need you operating at your best. And if you're not operating at your best right now, you go and have a lie down until you're done. And I'm just going to go sadly play the flute and look out the screen on 10 forward.
Yeah. Imagine that like a lot of the times Deanna Troi is just kind of like, all right, I've got Picard's session and oh man, there's a lot there. So I gotta clear my day after this one. There's just a lot, man.
Oh my God. Did we just explain every plot hole for like when her like empathic abilities like couldn't help? And it's like Deanna, like how did you not like detect that this person was secretly the murderer or whatever? And it's like because Picard is nearby. Like, there's just so many feelings all the time.
Yeah, and the guy is well technically French, but like he's tamping all that shit down. Like yeah, no, it's like I said, I really enjoy stuff like that where it's just like, I'd love to serve on the Enterprise. It's like, no, you want to be Captain Picard or Geordi or Worf. You don't want to serve on the Enterprise. It's kind of a mess. And definitely you don't want to serve on the Enterprise in any of the movies. Like in the TV show, you have a chance, like a good chance to survive, but like in the movies, like half the crew dies every movie. It's a mess.
Ricky, no. I do want to say one weird thing about Roguebook. So, it happens to be the Steam Spring sale right now, I guess. By the time this episode goes out, the sale will actually be over. So the game's 70% off. If you also have a time machine, you can go back to the week of this recording and get the game.
So basically what you're really saying is the game was 70% off, so feel bad about paying full price if you're going to go pay it.
No, feel good about paying full price because games are already way underpriced for the amount of human effort that they take. But you could have paid even less for all of that human effort if you also had a time machine. But I'm logged into Steam, and so it says there's a little section that's like, is this game relevant to you? And it says, similar to games you've played, Darkest Dungeon. And I was like, Okay, maybe. I mean, the combat definitely is like that. Like dudes on one side, dudes on the other side. Like simple animations. I was like, maybe the mechanics reflect it, but the aesthetics, sure, okay, I can see that a little bit. Then under that, it just arbitrarily, with no explanation, says players like you love this game. And it's like, okay, are you going to tell me my friggin' horoscope next? Like, what are you doing? But then the fun thing is under that, because I don't really use Steam to do like any of the community stuff. Like I just don't care at all. But there are a handful of people that I have had to become friends with on Steam. And a few of them I had to become friends with because we did giveaways on prior years, annual reviews. And so I had to be friends with that person so that I could send them a gift card. And one of the people who won a prior contest, so I am friends with them on Steam, has played this game.
Oh, nice.
So their little profile pictures down there.
Yeah, like I said, like I don't know how much does the game cost at full price?
Full price on Steam, it's $25. Right now it is $7.50.
Yeah, I definitely say it's worth $25 because I would have paid $25 for it, knowing what I know now. It's because I probably played it for, again, about 10 hours. Just $2.50 an hour, which isn't too bad for entertainment. And again, like even though I beat it, I would go back and play it more. And I was intending to until my hand slipped and I started playing Civilization 6 again.
Every time you're like, yeah, so I've been playing a little Civilization 6. I just have to reassess. Like, this isn't harmful, right? Like, okay, this isn't interfering with his job. It's not interfering with his marriage. It's not interfering with his ability to parent. He still seems healthy. Yeah. Go ahead, man. Indulge in all the Civ 6 you want.
Well, and the thing that's just wild about the Civ 6 portion of it is it's like I'm not even good at it. I always play at the easiest mode, right? I'm not getting any better, so it's not like, oh, you put in 300 hours of Civilization 6, you must be pretty good. Nope, just all junk food, all candy, all the time.
Well, that feels like that tracks in some ways, right? Because the point, because there's like learning, right? And for learning, you have to be getting challenged, and but not too much, right? There's a correct amount. And then there's flow, and flow is when you are being challenged, but it is like within a certain range of your ability. So like you can't check out, but you're also not being pressed to the point where you are being pushed into like learning territory, right? You're like, you're doing a thing you're good at, but it is taking a lot of your attention and effort. And then like, I just put The Office on in the background. Like the whole point is that it's not challenging, right? If every time you sat down to play Civ 6, you were like white knuckles on your PlayStation controller and like grinding your teeth and stuff, like that wouldn't be I would have a hard time if someone said, oh, that's my comfort game. And I'm like, you don't look comfortable, right? That's, I think it has to be not challenging intellectually, or, like if it was a movie or music or a book or whatever, like it has to not challenge you in any significant way. Otherwise, I don't know how it would be a good comfort thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I co-sign all that. And especially in Civilization 6, I find that, the white knuckle thing is so easy to fall into, because normally if there is a setback, it takes so long for you to like unknit that setback. And that's why I don't want any setbacks. And I actually had a very small one in the most recent game where I was playing, where like, to speak about Civilization 6 for a little bit, they have the true start location Earth, right? Where it's the Earth map, and you start where your civilization would be on the map, right?
So they all start in Africa.
Yes, yeah, because there's well, and actually that is part of the problem, is there's a whole bunch of European leaders, right? So when you do that, what inevitably happens is like there's like 4 or 5 civilizations that start off right near you, right? Now, the upside to that is everybody starts off as a settler, and you have to settle. And you start with one warrior. Settlers, and you get to go first, right? So normally your warrior starts off within one tile of another civilization settler. So you get to start the game with 2 settlers. And so I did all of that, and then Caesar was to my south, and he was crowding me, and I'm like, I'm going to go to war with Caesar. And I went to war with him, and that jerk, man, like he kept fighting back like a jerk, and eventually I was like, fine. And he was like, hey man, I'll give you 5 gold a turn if you just leave me alone. I was like, that sounds entirely legitimate because I've got about 10 rounds until I can declare war on you again. And it's going to take me about 10 rounds to research the weapons I need to kill you. So
funded by your gold.
Yes. And so I took his gold, I put it to good use, and I beat him to death. And actually, it was particularly awful because in this game, if you have a civilization or a city that is close enough to another one, you can cause that city to rebel if like you have enough population, you know? So the idea is that like they identify more with you than with their parent, you know?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had a city near him and it was being pulled away from him by another one. And I waited to defeat him until that other city got pulled away. So I didn't have to take it, you know? So I just sat there and it was like, oh, this one city just rebelled. I'm like, cool. All right. Now I own this city. He's like, what happened to my empire? I'm like, yeah, that really turned south for you, didn't it? I think the mistake that you made was suing for peace with me. That was your big problem. So
yeah. I think I'm not a historian, so please do not like get super mad at me if the way I put this is inaccurate for any particular European culture. But like, look at a map of Europe from like the 1700s and the 1800s and the early 1900s and then after World War II, right? And like whole countries blip in and out of existence and their borders were really kind of fuzzy and stuff. So saying like, you know, oh, well, they all start right on top of each other. And so like this civilization may just be like blotted out before the game even gets going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Like think there are, you know, there's like officially, I think we recognize some like 193 or 198 countries or something in the world, like low 200s. It's not that many, right? Considering how big the world is, it's just not all that many countries. But if you go back even just a couple hundred years, it was probably way more than that because like every group of assholes thinks that they're a country. They're like, well, we're the Flargan civilization. And those people over there who look and dress exactly like us and we share farmland, they're the Blargan civilization, right? And so like that all settled fairly recently. So I don't know, points for accuracy, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and outside of, you know, small groups of people being butter side uppers and butter side downers, I think that we in particular in America don't that doesn't ring true to us because like it's the United States basically like slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger and then stagnated, right? Not stagnated, but like we have our borders now, right? You know, but like the idea of you know, Canada or Mexico coming in and snatching up a piece of our territory is like, well, that's not possible. But then all of a sudden you look at historical maps because again, like for the US in 1776 to present, right? Like it's just gotten bigger and you know, and it's a huge chunk, right? But yeah, it's like during that time, it's like, well, a bunch of different countries like blipped out of existence, you know?
Yeah. Parts of this country, I mean, putting aside, obviously, like all the people who lived here, right? Like the French and the Spanish, and then also separately the native I'm not actually sure what that group was called before the Spanish invaded, because there were a lot of groups, and I'm not sure what the term for the like collection of groups is, but like they also had claims to this land, right? So even just the powers we would recognize as like the French and the Spanish, because they're still around, so they count, right? Like then they owned different parts of what we now consider America. And then like after we did settle all of this country, we still went out and engaged in a little bit of empire, because there's stuff like American Samoa, which is probably not what they called it.
That is true. I saw a map recently where it said it showed Canada and it just said North America, and then below that America, and then South America. And I'm like, that is kind of the way Americans look at it, right? Like,
that is 100% the way Americans look at it. Yeah. Oh, sad. But that's why you can start a new game of Civ 6 as Gandhi and be the warlord this planet deserves.
Not the warlord it needed, but the warlord it deserved.
The curtain falls. The music plays. The credits roll, then it all fades to black. and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day